Where is she? Over there. There we go. Yeah, this is working. Oh my god, this is actually gonna be working. This is amazing. I don't know why people complain about visual clarity in this game. How am I sustaining mana? I have Battle Rouse. Alright, Vol summon skeletons. Alright, where's the real Cirrus? He's over there. You think I'm gonna stop cycloning? Ever? Easy! Easy budget league start. Ward loop build. Let's go. Hello everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Off Meta Mondays, where then we post the video on Tuesday, where I like to do a little discovery either on PoE Ninja, the forum, somewhere else, try to find some off meta builds, maybe some undiscovered, hidden, unpolished gems that we can take a look at and highlight some very creative, interesting things about builds in Path of Exile. Especially this league right now in 3.18, the meta feels kind of stale. Everyone is playing a lot of the same exact builds, exact same archetypes as last league, especially with the increased difficulty of Arch Nemesis. And today we have a very special treat. So if you're familiar, cast while channeling Volatile Dead, it's always kind of been like a budget version of like a cast on crit Volatile Dead type of thing, or even thinking about like the old traditional Spellslinger VD. And there's always a handful of people that play that every single league. It's a nice, like real budget way to get started. But looking at PoE Ninja, we found someone who's being a little extra clever here. And what we have here is something that I am calling Ward Loop at home. If you're familiar with Ward Loop, you know, it's been very popular for the past couple leagues, where you basically set up this cast when damage taken setup where you're summoning skeletons, you'll take damage, it'll trigger Forbidden Rite, which will summon more skeletons, and you'll set up a loop that will just go forever. You don't have to press any buttons, and it'll just spawn billions and billions of spells every single second. Infinite damage, but it's also like a very fragile and annoying build that's not only annoying to put together, almost every single map mod or even being in a party with someone with auras can brick it. It's also very expensive and very finicky to get going. And what we have here is this incredibly budget Ward Loop-ish type of build that's kind of combining like cast while channeling Volatile Dead, you know, which is a very known archetype, as well as Ward Loop, which is a very well-known archetype, and mashing them together into a budget, funny little thing that is surprisingly effective, to the point where if this build isn't changed next league, I might play around with it. After seeing this, we poked around. We saw some really funny, weird builds on PoE Ninja yesterday. Even someone doing like a Indigon body swap. There's some really funny ones. It's been really fun, kind of trying to find some off-meta stuff. This one really jumped out at me because it looks the most viable, and I really, really love when people put, you know, their own flavor on a build. Quick little interjection here. I just did a search as I was editing, and it looks like this might be a build that is moderately popular in the Korean side of things. It looks like they do upgrade and they go into Annihilating Light, and they use Leadership's Price a little bit later as it upgrades towards the end game. I think it's pretty interesting that this is a build that might be moderately popular in Korea, and we just don't know about it here in our in the English side of things. And I think it's pretty cool to try to find and share these builds. But anyway, just wanted to toss that out there. Enjoy the rest of the video. To go over the actual build mechanics, and what I have here is like my budget version. I just want to show a lot of alternatives here. Is what we're doing is we're using Cyclone with cast while channeling and summon skeleton. We are just summoning skeletons as we're cycloning around. That's the beginning of the loop. Then we're using something called Heartbound Loop. You know, if you've ever used this before, or you've watched a Joe Swee video, what it does is every time a minion dies, you'll take physical damage that counts as a hit as well. And then that can trigger spells that are linked to cast on damage taken. And if you set that up properly, you can set up a loop that can just kind of keep going, right? And, you know, if you've done like a Ward Loop build, you know, you can get an engine going that will go forever. Also, if you played that, you know, it's incredibly finicky. You need all of the numbers to be exactly perfect. Otherwise, the loop breaks. The absolute beauty about this one is that since we're spinning ourselves and we're always forcing more damage to come out, it's not finicky whatsoever, right? We are always just pushing more damage, pushing more skeletons. And so there's no like real fragile breaking of the loop, like to the point where you might be able to even play with some friends once in a while, if you have any. To go along with that, to kind of like fully explain the engine here. Oh, let me let me take those back off. That'll get a little annoying. We are using something here called the Trader that is part of the Balbala Brutal Restraint. What this says is flask gain charges for every empty slot every 5 seconds. So you can see that we have a few empty slots here, so we're getting more flask charges. And that's how we're sustaining our Ulros Resolve flask here, which says ward does not break during flask effect. So what's basically happening is we have ward that as long as we're taking hits that are lower than the amount of ward that we have, based on our skeletons dying, right? So you can see that we're taking 420 damage on minion death, and you'll see that we have 533 ward. That means that the damage that we take is not breaking the ward, and we won't take any damage as the loop is going. And in fact, I should stop calling this loop. This is not ward loop. This is just ward isn't breaking. We're doing cast 1 damage taken, and we're triggering the cast 1 damage taken, based on the skeletons we're spawning here. But it's not a full loop. It'll stop automatically, so it will only continue as you're channeling, which is great, right? There isn't this like real finicky thing that has to be perfectly balanced to loop into itself. It just goes while you're pressing the button, and then it stops-ish when you let go of the button. We do have it's like a little bit of a loop with the extra skeletons here. So if you've never built anything that's based on cast 1 damage taken and Ulros Resolve, I do recommend looking up some ward loop guides to like go into a lot more detail. But the key here is that since we're using the Trader, we're getting our flask charges. We also want to roll for more flask charges gained on our Balbala, so you can kind of use a couple divines. I hit an absolutely ridiculous one here. I guess I'll show what I hit. I hit 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 increased flask charges gained. So I have 50% flask charges gained from these nodes here. This is absolutely not necessary. I hit something absolutely ridiculous when I was just using some divines on stream yesterday. But an alternative that you can use that is super, super cheap is just a medium cluster jewel for flask effect duration with fasting on it. And just one of these will allow us to maintain our flasks. Based on the wording of the Trader Keystone, the more empty flask slots that we have, the more flask charges that we get, the easier it is to sustain. Once you get enough over sustained, you can start putting in even more flasks. And if you get it perfectly set up, you can even have 4 flask slots fully filled up. So yeah, that's the basic idea. You want ward gear. We have 2 slots here for ward. We could also go for a grasping mail with global defenses and all that on the body armor. Obviously, those are very, very expensive right now. A nice alternative is to use a Skin of the Loyal or Skin of the Lords here. And so the colors that we're going for here are very, very cheap. This build is not sensitive to a lot of different keystones, so we can just grab whatever. And then you can put in a Skin of the Lords here, and you'll get much more ward, and it'll be a lot easier to sustain based on the damage that we're taking. And then the other really big key here for how we're able to get so much damage out of such like a budget, no investment build here is we are able to use staffs that use Battle Mage. And the cool thing here is there are multiple staves that are using Battle Mage, so there's a lot of alternative. This is like a league startable-ish build, right? Like you'd want to get to probably yellow or red maps, probably going to cost you about 5 to 10 exalts to get going, but almost a league starter, right? All of this gear is not really valuable right now. And yeah, so like total investment on this build right now is like just a couple exalts. On a league start scenario, it might cost you like 5 to 10 exalts, but there's so little in terms of like desired expensive things here. Like I just got kind of like a random throwaway jewel here that's actually doing very little. I'm mostly just using it for some other jewel sockets. We are using survival instincts. We want to get as much flask charges gained, as much flask charge duration here. The duration kind of offsets the gain here pretty nicely. So this is a nice little cheap slot. We also want to use the Magnate or the upgraded version, the Tactician, which gives us 50% increased flask charges gained here. And then in combination with that, we're using Zoph's Blood, which currently no one cares about it. It's dirt cheap. Used to be like the go-to expensive thing, but it's in an amulet slot. So competing with Ashes and Omni and all that, this is really just a nice little budget alternative that gives us Avatar Fire, which means that we can stack flat damage from any source and it'll convert to fire, which means that even the Disintegrator, which is usually like a throwaway item that no one ever cares about, right? This is usually just like a total throwaway item, right? No one uses a Disintegrator, but since we're using Avatar Fire, the flat damage from it with Battle Mage converts into damage towards our spells, and it actually gives us some pretty good value. But yeah, the ideal item here is a Martyr of Innocence, which gives us a ton of direct fire damage as well as Battle Mage, which also like is really good for our offensive and defensive portions of this build. I just want to show that on League Start scenario, this item is going to be super common, super cheap. No one's going to use a Disintegrator. You could even go for like a plus gem staff or something like that. Absolutely not necessary, but I just want to show like I am so impressed that this is something that is like league start viable and just works. And I, as I showed in the intro, I killed Cirrus and Veritania on just, super budget, like nothing build, like comfortably too. Another thing I want to point out here is we're stacking a lot of life recovery as well as mana recovery based on the mana mastery right here. So we get damage taken recouped as mana, and we're also using mind over matter here. You'll see that I'm reserving no mana, no auras, which actually works really, really well when you have low ward, and it kind of counters some of the damage that we're taking, right? Like, there's a lot of considerations that this person put into the build that allows us to kind of like keep that engine going without investing too much into like, not having enough damage, too much armor, too little ward, stuff like that. Really, really impressed, like how well this build feels. And then to get to like the main gems that are going on here, we see that we are doing caster damage taken, volatile dead, and detonate dead. I'm using spell cascade and increased critical strikes. We have another link here with caster damage taken, spell cascade, assassin's mark, desecrate. This is my own modifications. The person here was using vol fireball as well as righteous fire. And then in the staff, you can kind of link whatever. I'm doing blazing salvo, wave of conviction, whatever. You can put in flame surge. You can see that I also have a firestorm, basically just for aesthetics. It's not really doing anything. And then we have additional little summon skeletons here, just to have a couple more skeletons and trigger more often. Keep the engine going a little bit. But yeah, this is a T16 map, no map mods on it. You'll see that I'm a double 5-link. Total estimated value of this build is just a handful of exalts at the very most. You'll see I still have like low-level gems in here that aren't leveled up. The damage isn't anything super impressive, but the fact that this just works, right? This is a clever use of game mechanics, looking at existing archetypes and just making something that like really feels pretty impressively good, especially with the damage recuperation and the flexibility with the different gems and the links and everything that we can do here. You can kind of customize this. You could even make a cold or lightning version if you really wanted to. But I do think as an elementalist going fire, we're going to get so much more value from just doing a fire thing. And volatile dead is just like, I don't know. It's one of those skills where it's just so it's very like game defining, right? It just, you can kind of just like summon a bunch of them, right? You just kind of like stand here, you get the engine going, summon a bunch of volatile deads, and then you go forward and yeah, right. Remember, this is a T16 map boss on just like a couple exalts invested. And we're able to like clear really cleanly. It's not fast. It's not like super, super flashy. But if the mechanics that go into this build are not touched, this is like basically league start viable right now on next league. Like, I am having so much fun looking at how hilarious and great this is. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. That like double 5-link, dirt cheap uniques that no one cares about on league start. Another cool thing that I missed here, we're using the Stampede here, which the cool thing about that is your movement speed is always 150%. So that way, we don't actually have to worry about using Divergent Cyclone. You can just use regular Cyclone because the Stampede says your movement speed cannot be reduced. It can't be increased, so you can't go any faster than this. But it's really nice for just cycloning around and you're going full speed the whole time. The benefit as well is that since it is a Blight unique, we can anoint multiple things. And so we're anointing Druidic right here, which gives us more flash effect duration, as well as more mana, which gives us some more defense with the Mind Over Matter. We're also anointing Battle Rouse, which gives us more mana, more damage recouped as mana. That's what allows us to just trigger a bunch of spells, and the mana just keeps flowing. We don't worry about it. You'll see as soon as the recoup gets fully going, the mana is just always topped off. And then with the Mind Over Matter, right, we're actually like moderately tanky against hits, like all things considered. The fact that there's like nothing put into this build. Hopefully just like this quick little showcase showing some off-meta stuff that might kind of tweak your interest here. I just love when people remix existing things and find clever ways to put something together, especially on a budget with less desired things. And then maybe this will spark your interest. If there's any other off-meta builds that you'd like to see me try out, I would love to hear your suggestions in the comments. I'm so happy to start the series off and share off-meta, kind of interesting, quirky builds with you all, because this is really probably my favorite thing about Path of Exile. If you look at many of my builds in the past, I kind of like remixing things and finding like clever ways to put things together that maybe people haven't done in the past. So yeah, thanks for watching the very first episode of Off Meta Mondays, posted every single Tuesday. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Goodbye.